Last week on the Personal Growth Podcast, we discussed the power of self-reliance, image, character and integrity, self-discipline, and extraordinary performance and excellent results.
You're listening to the Personal Growth Podcast with Perza and Cole.
All right, thank you, Eric. So, we are excited to have a guest with us here at Tribe Point Studios for this episode. But before we introduce her, we want to tell you a little about this episode. I heard a talk from Will Smith recently where he brought up the topic of fault and responsibility, and it really struck a chord in me. So we're going to be having a conversation about that and a few other things that Will Smith talked about during that actual talk. So, without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first guest on the Personal Growth Podcast, the incomparable Erin Riley.
She is a mutual friend of both Eric and I's. As a guest on the podcast, we're going to give her the opportunity to tell her a little bit about herself and how she has come to know Eric and I.
Okay, sounds good. Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Erin.
How do I know you two? Well, I guess I'm a comedian sometimes, and that's how and that's how I know you two, because we all see each other at the comedy club.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hella.
That's that's how that went, and that's how I know you.
All right.
So we've reached out to each other back and forth over the last couple weeks, week, whatever it was, and it's pretty exciting that it sounds as if you're doing some of your own personal growth and personal development, and it seemed you were intrigued by what we had going on, and we were going to have a conversation about it.
Because who wouldn't be intrigued by what we got going on?
Yeah, it's hella intriguing.
It is.
An appropriate use of the word hella.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet. So,
yeah, personal growth. I've been doing a lot of that professionally and a lot more personally. I mean, isn't it all wrapped up in one big growing moment? I don't know. Damn it, guys. It's just... personal growth. This is a cool podcast idea. So I thought, I've been reading a lot of books. I do work for an organization that does a lot of strength-based professional development.
Huh.
Strength-based professional development,
like from a character point of view, or from physical
lifting
strength.
like 20-pound dumbbells.
Well, listen, guys. I don't know if you know this. I'm pretty swole.
I can tell. I wouldn't want to fight you.
No. So, everybody talks about the Myers-Briggs.
The personality test?
The personality test. So this is it's called the Gallup Strength Finder test. And it's over 100 questions that you just quickly go through and answer.
Is it horse-based?
Yeah.
Because Gallup.
Oh, dude, that went way over my head.
It's
a recurring theme here on the Personal Growth Podcast.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It's a sense of humor. I just don't.
You don't get it?
I've been ruined by comedy clubs.
Oh, dang it. Right. Yeah. So then it just picks out a bunch of what your biggest strengths are. Top 5. I have top 10. Actually, I have 34 strengths total.
Out of?
I don't know. A lot.
Okay. So this is a test that has been put together by your company, or?
No, it's at Gallup, and so Gallup does polls.
Okay.
It's the same company, or no? Is it Clifton? You know what? They regardless, go on, find some strengths. It's like Gallup or Clifton or whatever. Yes, when I worked at the YMCA, they made me do this, and they had no context. Ooh, this might be bad. I might be throwing the Y. I don't care. I worked for the Y. They also fired me. It was all a thing. But they made me take this test.
Okay.
And then when I went to, now that I work at another organization, it's a center for independent living. They also use the same strength finder. So I had already come in with all my strengths.
So as you're taking this test, is it like a placement type test where they'll decide what part of the organization you'll be working in based on the test?
No, it really goes in. It's like the Myers-Briggs. So you just answer a bunch of questions, and sometimes it's like the same question only worded a little differently, and you just have to quickly respond with whatever as
like
quick as you can. Yes, because it's also time, so you can't think. So sometimes you'll skip a couple of questions because you're thinking too hard about it, and then it'll come up with basically it does its little algorithm thing and then comes up with what your strengths are. Everybody has different strengths. I'm sure there are people who have the same strengths in the same orders, but everybody's is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So my top strength is, my number 1 is input, restorative, empathy, significance, which I hate, but love all at the same time. I feel like, and I always struggle with this one, having significance in my top 5 because I just feel like it's very showboaty. And when people hear that, they're like, oh, so you just want to be the center of attention, and that's what it's not that.
Right. Being the center of attention and desiring recognition aren't the same thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I'm coming to term with.
Okay. When you say number 1 input, what do you mean?
Yeah. So input means that I like to take as much information as I can. Whether or not I'm reading something or from a conversation, I'll probably ask questions just to gather information. And then what I do with input usually is then say, hey guys, did you know about this thing? Let me teach you about that. That sounds cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So that kind of makes sense of why I went into environmental education.
Yeah.
I was like kind of a teacher for a little bit.
So you're like the Lorax.
I wish.
You speak for the trees.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'd like to do. I mean, I really like my job right now. It's great. But I'd like to get back into some environmental work again. That's kind of where my passion is.
Well, you could always pick up trash on the side of the road.
Oh, I sure can.
And then you can input it into garbage bags and realize how significant a thing you've made.
Right.
Boom. Tying everything in, baby.
Thanks, Eric. That's great.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful.
I feel like you say that's wonderful. Like those are the words you use, but I don't feel like you
know,
believe it.
This is a fun thing. You'll maybe learn about me as we go along and talk. Because other people have also said this. They're like, you sound very sarcastic. Mm-hmm. And I'm really not that sarcastic.
Oh, no.
I really am not.
Not at all. What? Get right out of town.
Stop it.
There's some sort of dialogue going on here.
Because Eric is convinced that I'm constantly saying sarcastic things. I mean, maybe 75% of the time. But sometimes I'm really excited about things. And someone pointed out the other day, they're like, if I did not know you, I would really think that you were being super sarcastic right now. But since I know you, I actually know you're very excited and happy.
Well, that
it's a fine line.
Yeah. That probably is a blessing and a curse in some way.
Yeah.
Because, like, you get to know the people that actually know you and develop those relationships and set aside the other ones that are not so significant.
Yes, and that's what I've been doing a lot lately. Way to go, Dwayne. Look at that.
Yeah.
Boom. Personal growth, baby.
Yeah.
Personal growth.
That's exactly what I've been working on a lot.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So, Eric.
Yes.
Speaking of significance.
Yes.
Do you think that being a comic has anything to do with significance, like the desire for significance for you personally?
Oh, yeah. Sure. I mean, why else would I get up on stage and try to convince a room full of strangers to like me if I didn't want some kind of positive attention?
Right.
You know, like if I didn't want at least, this particular chunk of time to be all about me, why else would I get up on stage and be like, so here's some stupid things I was thinking about. Ba-ba-ba-ba, yuck, yuck, yuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I asked that to you because you've already, Aaron, you've already said more or less that that's something that you desire and that you had some attachment to it being a negative thing
Right.
that is perceived by other people sometimes.
Well, that's just my perception of how it's how it's perceived. Like, I like to put a lot of I like to think that I can read people's minds, and it always goes to the negative. So I'm like, oh, they for sure think I'm an asshole.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Who's-
if you were reading my mind, you'd be spot on.
Thanks, Eric.
You know what's,
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Yeah,
I'm
great.
just kidding.
I know.
Just kidding.
I know. But that's kind of where it just, without any context. So when I first got it, and no one else, actually nobody who has ever taken this, who I know, the Strength Finder, actually has significance in their top 5. It is a very, it's a leadership quality.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. I know there was another thing I was trying to think of, but yeah, it's a leadership quality. Significance for me is more that I want to make an impact, whether that's like on my community or something. Yeah, I'm a comedian,
yeah,
but I also like,
you wanted to mean something.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. When I'm up on stage, it's yes, all about me. But I also want to make a connection with other people and be like, look how stupid I am. Do
Mhm.
you relate?
Yep.
Are
And,
you laughing about this? Because I'm going to laugh about it. Like, hey, there we go.
like 9 times out of 10, people are going to relate to it. I think
You hope.
Right, exactly. You hope they
You
do.
hope people are going to
Well,
relate to it.
this is, I think, a legitimate thing to be able to say, that 9 out of 10 times people are going to relate to it, regardless of whether you're hoping it or not.
Right.
Because, I mean, I think what makes a good comic or a good entertainer or anyone that like is speaking in front of a group of people, what makes them good is like they're being real and they're being raw and they're letting that like the mask down, you know, that like we walk around with on a regular basis because we don't want anybody to actually see what's going on. But people want to see the real and the raw. And I think you saying looking for significance and wanting to have an impact, that's exactly my motivation to do podcasts, to do blogging, to like post really regularly on social media, because there's so much superficial nonsense that's being thrown around, and it means absolutely
That's for damn
nothing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much superficial nonsense.
Yeah.
And there is a place for that
Right.
sometimes, you know. But like, when are we going to get through the surface level? When are we going to have an actual conversation that means something?
Right.
And so, like, I'm super stoked to hear you having these same kinds of like desires that I have, and our producer has. I know from previous conversations that we've had. Like, I think this is probably hitting home a lot for our producer right now. And as time goes on, like, we'll get to know more people that want to have that same kind of thing. And going
Right.
back to last week's episode when we were talking about like leaders creating more leaders,
Yes.
not leaders looking for more followers.
Right.
Like, we're on the front lines of creating more people that have the same mindset that we do.
Right.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
Doing a goddamn public service.
Yes.
A PSA.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I've been going to some conferences lately. One of them was the Idaho Nonprofit Conference, and that was the biggest thing. I'm in this program called Rising Leaders. I'm a
Ooh.
rising leader in the
Get
Idaho
right
nonprofit
outside.
world. Woo! I have a mentor and everything, and then we went to leadership classes.
Okay.
But that was the biggest thing, was to talk about the fact that leading doesn't necessarily, I mean, there's a difference between like a leader and a manager.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes that's positive, sometimes that's negative. I mean, you can be a negative leader. I've had plenty of those,
Yeah.
Yep.
you know, and that seems to always be, And we even talked about that at the conference where it's like, oh, you learn a lot more by all those negative leaders of being